our participants are joining in, and the number of our participants is rapidly increasing. So on this note, on the behalf of Mindler team, I would like to welcome all of you who have joined us today. We have a brilliant panel of distinguished personalities who will be sharing their insight on today's topic, which is the impact of foreign universities setting up a campuses in India. And it's my pleasure to introduce them all to you. I will be your host for today's session. I am Kangan Chadda, and let me take a few moments and introduce our panelists to all of you. Firstly, we have Mr. Tarun Singh Anand, who is a chairman at Universal Business School. Mr. Anand is a visionary leader in India's management education diaspora. He runs the top-ranked Universal Business School, which he set up in 2009 as India's first green business school. Mr. Tarun has an MBA from SPJMIR, Mumbai, and pursued executive education at Michigan Business School, USA, Tuck School of Business, USA, and IE Business School, Spain. He chose to develop award-winning BBA and MBA programs in India post his learning from a highly distinguished corporate career of 25 years. He is passionate to create a college program that contributes skilled, job-ready candidates to satisfy the rigorous placement needs of India's top corporates, led him to forge partnership with the leading global universities in UK, USA, France, Spain, Italy, Switzerland, Mexico, and Bulgaria, and bring global best practices in management education in India. Under his leadership, the Universal Business School has become one of the leading B schools in India, offering students excellent placement opportunities after their MBA. He loves mountaineering and scaled Mount Kilimanjaro Everest Base Camp and represented India in international rugby tournament. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Siddhant Shahani, a co-founder and executive president at Atlas Skill Tech University. Mr. Siddhant has trained as a pharmacist from University College London, UK, and completed his master's in international health policy and economics from the London School of Economic and Political Science, UK. He has also completed his corporate finance from London Business School. Mr. Siddhant has also worked with McKinsey & Co. at their London offices and played a foundational role in establishing McKinsey higher education and health analysis practices. He has been instrumental in working with the government of Maharashtra to establish a future-focused framework for a new genre of innovation-driven urban university. At Atlas, he is responsible for executing the vision and directing the overall performance and growth of the university. Thank you, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Next, we have Dr. Prabhu Kumar Agarwal, Vice Chancellor at Bennett University. Dr. Agarwal has a Bachelor of Technology from IIT Kanpur and an MBA and PhD from the Foster School of Business, University of Washington, Seattle, USA in Operation Management. With close to 30 years of experience in both academia and industry, Dr. Agarwal has held various senior level positions, including Assistant Dean, Mason School of Business, College of William and Amp, Mary Williamsburg, Virginia, USA, Chief Learning Officer for JSPL Group Companies, New Delhi, India, Founding Vice Chancellor, O.P. Jindal University, Raigad, India, and President, NIIT University of India. Dr. Agarwal is an active teacher, speaker, and consultant in the areas of operational excellence, supply chain optimization, business analytics, and breakthrough performance. Dr. Agarwal's research has been published in various leading academic and practitioner journals. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Last but not the least, we have with us Mr. Jan Garin, country head of Ecole Institute Lab. He's as Indian as he is French. Mr. Yan started working as a professor of motion graphics and 3D design and having resonated with the teaching methodology of the institute. He took up the job of Director of Operations and now the country head of Ecole Institute Lab. You can find him striding across campuses' corridors, juggling between multiple admin tasks and conducting a few lectures, but never without his coffee mug. He is the communication liaison between French and Indian campuses, bringing about a balance between the two. While in class, he teaches treaty design with ease and constantly updates the school curriculum to keep up with the latest trends. And according to him, problems are half solved if one learns to be a good listener. Now, I'll take a moment to introduce our moderator, Ms. Shilpa, to our participants. Ms. Shilpa is an alum of International Management Institute and has a master's in psychology from the University of Phoenix, USA. Packing over 25 plus years of incredible work experience in career guidance, life coaching, HR management, and teacher training, Ms. Shilpa brings a holistic purview of the entire education and skill building spectrum from schools to organization. An independent trainer, Shilpa has coached students at some of the prestigious colleges of Delhi University and business studies colleges and prestigious schools and organizations across the country. She is a passionate coach with a flair of comicality and storytelling, which makes her an instant hit amongst hundreds of students and learners for all age groups. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Shilpa ma'am, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Gangan. Appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to a very august panel. Thank you so much all for taking the time to be here. We're discussing an extremely interesting topic, which is the impact of foreign universities coming into the country. Just to do a very quick context setting, because I don't want to waste any time and I want to get all my panelists' answers and views. Over the last decade, actually, education in India has been an extremely exciting space. We've looked at private universities growing, some of the really amazing ones that we're seeing on the screen as well. We've seen just the sheer amount of variety that's now available to the Indian student in terms of courses, combinations, how they can have that flexibility at higher education, which a few decades ago was not possible. And which was, of course, one of the reasons, sadly, that a lot of students who were looking at higher education and wanting that flexibility looked outside of India to be able to find it. And now we have that available in India with our own universities as well. We've also seen like a massive change with EdTech growing, with the fact that we're combining so much technology with everything. And of course, the last 2 years taught us a great deal about what we can do online with technology when it comes to teaching and learning as well. But we've gotten an even more exciting thing that has happened, or at least a disrupting thing that has happened. So since all economies go through a process of disruption, for the longest time, the Indian government had, of course, been very reticent about entry of anybody from the outside when it came to certain sectors, education being one of them. Now we're looking at the fact that there is going to be foreign institutes will be able to set up in India and be able to have India campuses. We've seen countries in the Middle East that have already done this to great success. So what I want to be able to kind of bring forth and be able to get impact and kind of get input on. First of all, that the first question that I'd like to be able to place to everyone, and what I'll do is I'll let you know who I'd like to be able to go in what order first. What do you feel would be the overall impact of this very nascent situation right now, but foreign universities coming into India? And how do you feel it, what do you see very succinctly, very quickly as the pros and cons, the positives as well as the negatives, your thoughts that we could get? So I'd like to be able to go with Dr. Agarwal first, and then I'd like to go to Siddharth. After that, I'd like to go to Mr. Tarandeep Singh, and Jan, we will come to you at the end, and we will then turn the order around accordingly, if that's all right. So Dr. Agarwal, all yours.
Thank you, Shilpa. First of all, thanks to everybody here on the panel. I think it really is an interesting topic. I will just take a minute to kind of give you my top level view. It's a very welcome move. High time. I'm a liberal at heart and a capitalist also, and believe that every sector of our economy in the service sector, especially that's opened up to foreign competition, has only benefited. So at the end result is going to be a customer who is going to really benefit. You said cons. I think there are, I think I'm going to pick a word that you used, disruption. It's a disruptive force in the education sector in India.
Mhm.
Most of the cons are probably related to how existing institutions and people will be able to respond to that. I think there's going to be a lot of discussions around the rules that govern foreign institutions coming to India versus existing institutions. And I think eventually it's all going to culminate into a level playing field.
Super. Great. Siddharth?
I think, I'd like to second what Dr. Agarwal said, that it's definitely a welcome move, because any liberalization of the education sector is welcomed by us, those who have either been highly regulated or have, large amounts of conflicting regulation to deal with. The practicality of the situation in India is that, if you look at the government's main policy, which is the national education policy, and everyone's talking about a 50% gross enrollment ratio by 2035. Today, with us being at 27%, we have about 35 million odd students in higher education. And to take it to 50%, we need another 37 million in higher education in the next 7 years. And even with an average of 3,000 or 4,000 students per university, you need another 11,000 universities just to achieve that rate in the last 7 years.
Right.
So any move that opens up the education sector is badly and deeply required. I think the question will be is whether do any really good universities of repute come to India. Because I know we talked about the Middle East and we've talked about China, but effectively universities leaving their home turf and going to other countries hasn't always ended well. And therefore, we have to see whether this is really attractive for foreign universities to come. I think what will happen, though, is the level of collaboration between Indian universities and foreign universities will go up far more significantly. And I think that is really what will come out of this move. However, I think if we have an opportunity to influence our government, their focus has to be digital education, because we're not going to build another 10,000 universities in the next 5 years. There's a shortage of faculty, there's a shortage of quality. We know all of that, and therefore really focusing on existing institutions and enhancing their digital capabilities, maybe through international partnerships, is possibly the way forward. And that's our view on the move, but highly welcome, because anything that opens up a sector that I would say has been for too long under shackles is something that is a privilege for all of us.
Okay, great, wonderful. Tarandeep?
Thank you. So great points from both of them. I think the point I'm going to just harp on is the level playing field, right? So just hot off the press, a few weeks ago, the Maharashtra government issued a fee regulation act, right? So when education also happens to be a state subject, whereas I know this is a policy from the central government. So how do you put these two things together? You are trying to give, why will the foreign universities come? They want, administrative freedom. They want academic freedom. They want financial freedom, right? That's what drives them to come. And of course, what the Gulf and China examples is they roll out the red carpet, give you free land, give you free infrastructure. They'll help you, support you. They'll, and luckily they are well-to-do nations, so they can put in a lot of investment, because they said we want, New York University to come, or we want XYZ to come into Singapore, INSEAD, right? So they go the extra mile. And that's what I agree with Siddharth, that will the top guys come? Because remember this, why is Harvard the way it is? Why is Wharton the way they are? Is because of the faculty, right? The faculty is what makes universities tick. Now imagine a faculty, a CK Prahlad or one of these top guys. You're going to ask them to be in two universities, so they're going to be effective in the university, the base campus, and then you're telling them now you've got to pull your weight in the new campus. So it's going to be a very difficult choice for them. And so the top universities have clearly said, no, this is not our world that we are interested in. We are Harvard because there'll be only one Harvard. We're
Right.
Wharton because there'll be only one Wharton, and MIT thinks the same way. So then what happens? Then where do we go in the pecking race? So earlier, the view was that the top 100 universities in the world would come, which are world class. I mean, no doubt about it. Now that has been slightly diluted in the new regulation, where we are saying 500 top 500 universities in any discipline. So you're now further diluting it down to top 500, and then
Right.
you're saying, furthermore, then the government is saying that if you're reputed in your country, you will be allowed to come. Does that mean a university in Ghana, with no disrespect, they're also a foreign university? Is that what we are doing? So my question is that whilst we want all of this to happen, how are you going to make it with a level playing field where you were trying to tie down your existing institutions with a lot of, and I'm hoping these will all get ironed out because it has to. You can't say you can't do this, but they can do it.
Right.
That's not going to go well. So I think that's going to be the challenge and the slippery slope. And so it's going to go through a lot of, change before we get to where actually the point. And, I'll take one last example of what really has worked. Where have we become world class? Let's take the view of ISB Hyderabad, right?
Right.
In the business school world, they partnered with Kellogg and Wharton, and they have achieved and got into the top 20, top 30, now wherever rankings in the world. So they took in the inputs from the number top 10, top 20 universities in the world, and they have made an Indian product which is, able to compete with the best in the world. So that collaboration which Siddharth was talking about, I think that's going to be an interesting field to see how that happens, that can prop up the existing institutions so that they're ready to compete with the world, right? So those are my opening remarks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jan.
Not much to add. I agree with everything that has been said. I always find very important for any culture to have a look on what is happening in other culture, and having the possibility to mix is very good for enrichment. Innovation, obviously. Competition will definitely help with a global level. What I find very important is now the place of India in the world, and we see every day in the news how important India is in terms of strategy, economy, market, everything. I think all students need to be trained to international standard to really understand how to address Indian companies that are spread all around the world, but also foreign companies in India, and be important actors in this market. So for that, I'm very welcoming any foreign universities coming to India. It can only help.
Wonderful. All right, great. And some very interesting points that came up. One was obviously, of course, the challenge we'll face in terms of regulation, government, etc. What are the rules that apply? What is going to be good for the goose and gander, etc. Now, a couple of other questions. There's going to be obviously an economic impact, and obviously, since it's very early days, we are going to have to think about an economic impact, maybe from two perspectives. One from the students' perspective, which of course, where our nationalized universities and central universities have been able to provide a fairly subsidized sort of way of being able to access higher education. The other element is, of course, the whole aspect of we've got a larger amount of our students who go abroad to study for their higher education, and that's a really big aspect of economy that happens in that way as well. I want to be able to get your thoughts on what you perceive to be one, the economic impacts that you are looking at, not just from the perspective of one, the student, but overall, 33,000, 35,000 feet in terms of economy for India. And two, how do you feel this is going to impact that entire whole space, which has started and stopped in India, which is skill development? And I'm putting it in inverted commas for many reasons. So how do you think that is going to get impacted? So overall economy, 35,000 feet viewpoint, and the whole element of developing skills. Now I want to start in the other order now. So Jan, you'll go first. We'll then have Tarandeep, then we'll have Siddharth, and Dr. Agarwal, you'll be at the end on this one. So Jan, over to you.
Yeah, right. For the global economy at a world level, definitely, I think India has a lot to bring on the table, definitely. And having our students trained differently can only help India to shine better all over the planet. There are so many resources here, so many human resources that are needed in other countries where there are lack of resources. So having students trained directly to this standard will really, really help this global economy. In terms of local economy, same thing, I see only benefits by making our students a bit sharper here to develop what is sometimes missing once the things are developed in a more close environment, having understanding of different approaches, technologies, methodologies, will definitely help them to sharpen their tools and be more efficient with whatever is their specialty here. On the students' point of view, I heard a lot that it might be a problem for students to afford, for example, and separate even more the classes of students who can afford this kind of universities and those who can't. Unfortunately, I think it's true. However, we can see also some benefits from there, especially for studying abroad. I'll give you an example. For example, we give the opportunity for students to go for a master in France for almost free. Why? Because in France, the government is offering a special scheme that makes studies more or less free. And because we are implementing here, we managed to send Indian students to benefit to this program. So in that case, I think we can also help students who cannot really afford studies, because you know that any university abroad is automatically 5 to 20 times more than in India. And in this kind of scenario, we give this possibility to some students, definitely.
All right. Okay. Fair points that have come in. Tarun?
So from a macroeconomic impact, I think there are two elements to it. Can we, as with the establishment of these universities, attract student revenues from other nations, right? And to my mind, I think that will be, again, if we can get that mathematic right from the government side and the approvals right, I think that'll be a huge bonus, because if we can get and make India a global destination. So when the Gulf did it, you got a lot of people, in the Gulf who were typically, would have gone to New York, but stay back and do it in NYU in Abu Dhabi. I think that might be slightly a far further objective. So I would say that we should position this amazing opportunity to attract global students to India to come and study and experience India, given the stature that India is a top 5 economy of the world, and possibly 3 in a short duration. And the second point is of Indian students going. My sense is, of course, there is always percentage, but I don't think the numbers which are going abroad, and if this was a view that we would try and get a safe foreign exchange by our students going abroad in droves, I don't think that's going to change too much. Having said that, the Indian students here will get a great opportunity and great learning. Coming on the skills part, I think the private universities, which Siddharth and Prabhu belong to, and many such amazing stories, are doing an incredible job on skill development. And this is a recent phenomenon. It's a last decade phenomenon where private universities are really going above and beyond in terms of skill development. So I'm not sure. I would say that just because of foreign universities coming in, our skill program will go. Even before this phenomenon happened, all our graduates are running Google and Microsoft and the top companies in the world. So clearly we do something right, even in our public university system. So I think we just unshackle the opportunities, and then Indians do well across the world as well as in India. So on the skill side, I think we will be at par with what the innovations that have been coming in from all these fantastic private universities. So I think that's two. And on the student side, I think it's opportunities. So pick whatever you would like, which will give you the best education possible, which your families can afford. And I think the economics will be interesting, and I really don't know how they're going to marry that, because unless there's some form of subsidy, The foreign faculty clearly are, maybe 10x of, or maybe 20x of what Indian faculty are paid. Now, they would be subsidized to some extent, I would assume, to be able to come to India and teach, which is what the Indian universities have done when they've got foreign faculty. That's some model which will, because if they raise the fees to the levels that are in the US, Europe, then the appetite is going to be much lower. So they'll need to really come down at a 50%, or lesser than what they would charge in the home campus.
All right. Very interesting point. There's something that's got me thinking there, but yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. Siddharth.
So, I'd like to start with the focus on the students. When you look at Indian students going abroad, you really have two types of students going abroad. So one is where affordability is not a challenge. They come from, good economic standing houses, and they really want the best of global education, and they're happy to come back after their education.
Right.
That is, a small minority. The large majority of our students are actually looking at this as an opportunity to immigrate, right? And therefore, the choice of going to a UK or US or Canada, Australia for a type of undergraduate program or a particular postgraduate program is really for better opportunity and better employment.
Right.
And therefore, I feel when these foreign universities come in, as Tarun said, I don't think they're really going to see an abundance of Indian students coming in, because they probably will come in at a price point which is much, much higher than our private universities. They may not be able to provide the same international experience. And more importantly, if we look at the newspapers in the last couple of weeks, the focus is on job creation. We don't have those kind of jobs as yet which would attract these children. So therefore, on the students front, I do believe that it's not going to be that the minute these guys open up shop, everyone is going to jump to these universities. Second is, from an economic standpoint, if you read the regulation, they're allowed to repatriate so-called profit. And therefore, whereas they may increase the level of economic activity in the country, and of course there's better education, there's better research, and therefore there's new knowledge creation, I believe a lot of the so-called profit, although I must tell you, and I'm sure everyone agrees, running a higher education institution, surplus is a chimera. You never actually reach that, because your surplus is your students and the quality of education you deliver.
Right.
So therefore, the whole focus on profit repatriation, research, and economic activity, the impact is going to be limited for our country. Yes, it will raise the bar. I think the other challenge that people are not talking about openly is that I do not think that they will be able to bring in all their faculty. And therefore, what happened when IB education came in was the cost of faculty will go through the roof, which is great for if you're a faculty or a counselor and someone in the education ecosystem, but I think it'll hit our national system quite badly, more than the private universities. So again, a lot of this needs to be thought through. The economic impact, other than maybe one or two marquee universities coming in, and as Tarun said, why would they leave and come here? But I think we need to look at it from each aspect, and what all the stakeholders, what happens to the students, what happens to the faculty, what happens to the economy at large. And if you use China as an example, at least 20 American universities set up campus there, and they found it very, very, very difficult to coexist because just the ecosystem is different.
Right.
The experiences are different, the regulation, the culture is different. For example, in India, just to give you further example, our stakeholders are parents and students both. Right? Whereas in America, they treat the student very differently, or the US, UK, they treat the student very differently. So I think there is, a number of factors that one will have to consider when looking at their establishment in India.
Wonderful, thank you. Dr. Agarwal.
Okay. Tarun, I just wanted to let you know that we are not in the skilling space yet. So just FYI. But I think I just want to take a slightly different view from my colleagues. I think the economic impact of opening up the education sector should not be viewed very narrowly in terms of which institution will come, not come. The models of the outflows of $28 billion a year in foreign remuneration this year going up to 80 billion is some projections I have read. All that is okay. I'm going to take the premise that this model will work over 10 years eventually. And if it does, it improves the entire ecosystem of the younger generation with whom we are working, which means talent gets retained in India. The corporates get to hire better talent. The professors, the faculty opportunities increase. And the impact on our economy in general is going to be net positive. I can't give you a number. I can't measure it. I understand what Siddharth is saying and what Jan was saying and what Tarun is saying, who will come, who will not come. That's all true. And that's going to, I think, as Tarun said, take years to kind of get settled. Is there a business model? Is essentially what the question is. Is there a business model for these people to come? If the government has the right intentions, these business models will eventually have to, or rather the government's regulations will eventually have to cater to the right business models and create an environment in India that it will be successful. You're absolutely right. No institution is coming here without the right business model. And similarly, the existing institutions in India will also have to up their games. There will be better remunerations for faculty, more research-driven universities. I think this is a net positive for the Indian economy. And if it's a net positive for the Indian economy, it's a net positive for the global economy. And I have started even saying this from the very beginning, that I'm a huge optimist when it comes to this whole idea. But you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, it's going to be, what is the business model? If there is that conditions that are created for these people to come in here successfully. If you're targeting the top 500, right? None of our institutions are in the top 500, practically speaking, on the world stage, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8. So at least you're targeting, everybody you're targeting is better than our existing universities. Obviously, the MITs and the Harvards aren't coming in, right? But if the 150th is coming in, then we are lucky. I'd be happy to target somebody in the 150 to 300 range. They'd add tremendous value to our ecosystem. Yeah, and there's that student out here who is going to continue to migrate abroad. You can't stop that. It's an exponential wave. Yeah, and that's not slowing down. Absolutely not slowing down. So I think an entirely new target student will evolve eventually. Right. And I don't know who that is. But generally, disruptions actually end up at the low end or the unexplored markets. And that's where they start. They generally don't actually, the incumbents generally don't think this through. True. But the low end market, right? They start, it's the incumbents who kind of lose out because of the, there's a very nice HBR article on innovation and disruption. So I kind of suggest to your audience to look it up, which it was started, I think this article is a 1995 article that explored the idea of disruptive innovation. And if you think this through, right, there's a vast market in India that is not explored. Very true. And I'll leave it at that. Yeah, that ends up happening, I think, in India, because we're such a diverse country. It happens in almost every sector, whether it's retail or otherwise or anything. We're ending up with, new markets that get opened up. But okay, so let's go back. Now we talked about the positives. We talked about all of that. I want you to be able to articulate for me, if you can, what are you anticipating? Apart from, we're looking at the faculty piece, we're looking at those aspects we've already spoken about. From a government viewpoint interaction kind of perspective, in terms of where you see, keeping in mind what Tarun said right away, beginning was the fact that education is a state subject. What are you anticipating to be the roadblocks that will come
from a governmental perspective, right? And so that could be both central as well as state, in terms of if you can try and be doing, and I know I'm opening up a massive Pandora's box by asking that question. And so we need to be able to see, because how much time do we really have on this panel? Are we going to be here all night having that discussion? But so I want to be able to kind of get that viewpoint. What are you anticipating as, these are going to be our roadblocks right away that I see? And for this, I want to start with Jan first, then I want Siddharth to weigh in, then I want Tarun to weigh in, and Dr. Agarwal, you're coming in at the end again for this one, if you'll forgive me for that, please. So Jan, over to you first.
Yes, so it's a difficult question. I don't want to lose my visa, you imagine, so I have to be very careful.
We'll protect you. We're giving you poetic license at the moment. Poetic license, you're safe. This is a safe space. So, yeah.
No, I'm not an expert in government policy, honestly, but I imagine that it's a very difficult position for the government, in the sense that they will have to please everyone. We have to please their local universities because you cannot ignore them in terms of the experience, in terms of the value that they have here, their strength, their power. They are very present. You cannot at all ignore them. And it's inevitable now to be an international actor and to play with international universities also. So I guess India has very good diplomats, and they will have a lot of work in the coming years to please everyone and to make work everyone properly. I'm not too worried, because that's something that India is very used to make communities working together despite the differences. Sometimes it's even incredible. And I'm sure they are going to do that properly with foreign universities also.
Superb. Your visa is safe. Don't worry. All right. Well played. Well played. Siddharth?
No, obviously, this is a difficult question, because, as Jan said, any government has so many things to balance, right? Because bringing foreign universities to India is actually a great opportunity. As Dr. Agarwal said, it will enhance the overall ecosystem. But as I would say, individuals within the sector, I think there's only three things that you can really ask from any government when they're coming up with a policy. And I just request them to look at that. One is obviously transparency.
Right.
I think we're in the world's largest democracy. A consultative process to where we should reach is important. They are the final decision makers. They can make a decision, but I think it's important for them to hear out different perspectives, because often that's not clear. Second is, I would say, clarity, because very often one regulation contradicts another regulation. And maybe they look at this as an opportunity to view everything to do with internationalization to get full clarity. And the third, I would say, is equality, because as Tarun said, right, if we have to live by fee regulation, reservation, certain policies in recruitment, those either should apply to them or actually use this as an opportunity to get rid of them. So that's really, I would say, what the government should be looking at when it comes to this policy, because it is needed. It's not that it's not needed. We have to open our borders for education. There's no two ways about it. So I think that's the view on what they should do. Perfect.
Great thoughts, Tarun.
So, I'm going to just pick one, agree on all those points made by Siddharth. So one point for me is, which, happened last week when I was talking to one of the colleagues in a university, and he says, we are wanting to recruit international students. And the challenge for recruiting international students is maybe you need to have someone in an international location, right? To be able to do that. In India, it's easy. And that gets great foreign exchange into the country. So it's, and he said, but we can't, because we are a not-for-profit sector. And therefore, if any foreign exchange is going outside, which these days the line is so thin and so fine that we could lose our Section 12A, which is basically the not-for-profit, and that can be devastating. And then we would shut down.
Okay.
Right? This is how drastic. And then he further advised, which we are all aware, the Supreme Court and how they are looking at this whole not-for-profit segment. So you're not only dealing with the government, you're dealing with the biggest court in the country, who's made it again a bed of not roses, but that how do you navigate that to put what can you do, what can you not do in terms of activity. So that kind of boxes you in the current scenario. So I definitely would love to hear how as I said, make it fair and square across the board. Let the games begin. But you can't hold one down with so much and then say, you're completely off to the races. I think, and they will have to do that. They know that. But it's too big a pie. And by the way, there was a foreign universities bill in the parliament by Kapil Sibal in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, and that died.
Yeah.
Right. I'm assuming at that time I wasn't so much in the education world, but that's where it all, can they bring all these pieces together? And I think our government has the best opportunity given the kind of sway they have over the parliament. This is a phenomenal time for us to, break shackles.
Wonderful. Dr. Agarwal, you're on mute, sir.
Sorry. Yeah, again, thank you. I actually have a very bad throat, so there are so many aspects, and it's a tough question to answer. In the last 2-3 years, at least, I feel like the government's move is, and I hope it is the right. It's continuously evolving in the direction of less regulation. Becoming less regulated.
Right.
I think this is an opportunity for the Indian government to get less regulated and move to accreditation and quality as the standards by which they judge universities now. And eventually, if that's what happens out of this, and not just for the foreign universities, because I don't see how they will come if they come into this regulated environment.
Right.
They will not thrive. They will not do it. They won't come.
Yeah.
And if the people who are drafting these policies and regulations kind of open up to understanding what the Indian private university education system is like, and become less regulatory, and eventually allow us the same bandwidths. Fundamentally for me, government has no business. I don't know about my visa. Fundamentally, government has no business being in the education field. But in a country like India, it's kind of difficult to say that also because of access and equity and being able to. I believe the government has a strong reason to be in education and from the K to 12 space, and ensure that primary education and secondary education is available to every citizen. Post that, I think it is, I believe, a private sector enterprise which needs to, get into this, and the market forces should take over. That's my fundamental belief. I'm not saying that, and I hope that this move over the next decade will allow us as a country to view this from that perspective.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that front. I think, there has to be, and of course, a universal access to education up to the 12th grade. And I think it's a very important aspect to be able to then, as Tarun said, let the games begin and let it become a process in which it's not a requirement where we're kind of rethinking our economy to be able to look at what higher education actually means. What does it mean when it comes to being able to get a job after having a high school diploma or a high school, being able to graduate high school? How do we do that? And that's an interesting thought. Now, what I want you guys to be able to kind of put your hat on for me for is what I want to be able to take it towards when we're looking at it is there is that aspect of being able to have foreign faculty. We've spoken about that. Foreign faculty comes in. There is a cost factor. There is all of that. There is, of course, Indian faculty that is also available in a large number of people who would then look at opportunities in getting into academia because you have higher education institutes now of a variety who would be available to provide you that. How do you feel personally, in your personal opinions here, and nobody's visas hopefully will get impacted with this, that what do we need to do to rethink how we train our teachers, to be able to train faculty to get them up to scratch. Do we need to get up to scratch? Are we already ready? Or do we need to rethink that training for the faculty element as well? So for this, I would like, Tarun to be able to start first, then we'll go to Jan, then we'll go to Dr. Agarwal, and then Siddharth towards the end. So now I'm looking at from the perspective of your thoughts on faculty, gap with faculty, yes, no, and what do you think needs to happen, if anything?
So I think my personal view is that the recent guidelines of which have been come out for the UGC, which is the professor in practice, and it still has a long way to go for its acceptance. But I think what has been the traditional mindset is that if you don't succeed in the world of business, you become a faculty member, right?
Yeah.
And therefore that has been denigrated to a sense of where you don't get the best talent there, right? And of course the environment needs to be created to firstly get the best talent in, and therefore of course that means higher salaries. Can the education sector do that without knocking off the fees, which some institutions were to get top class American faculty? You have to really charge a bomb to be able to afford it. So that's the thing on the attracting the quality and making being a teacher, a professor, a very, very respectable person. They are in the US, they are higher than CEOs. The CEOs go to them for respect. Ask me about that in the Indian scenario, there'll be a few, but not the kind of respect that they garner in the Western world. So clearly there's a gap. Is it because of the talent pool is not of that ilk, or as you mentioned, the development of that talent? And I don't think we have, like the corporate structure allows for budgets and doing that. Yes, there are, you send them to IITs, you send them to IIMs, but I think it should become mandatory for every institution to have a very, very detailed, and I'm talking of a generalization, I'm not talking of a particular institute, to have that as a mandate to build the faculty skill sets, ability to engage the classrooms, and the ability to create better outcomes. So I think we are far away from that. At least that's my personal view.
Okay, perfect. Great. Yeah.
I would say that the faculty should be trained a bit more in terms of pedagogy instead of pure knowledge. For now, from what I know, I've never been in, I never studied in an Indian university, but from what I heard and I've seen is there's a lot of transfer of knowledge, which is great. It's really important, but the pedagogy, the psychology behind the methodology of training students, especially understanding the students of a different generation. That's always one of the biggest challenges the faculty might face. It's important for them to be trained for that. And that's one part. And also my personal point of view on that is they should be more skill-oriented. That is what is more and more needed to the industry, I know at least, where, again, instead of training the students for exams only, they should be trained for skills. That's, for me, that's very crucial. And I'll give you an example that has nothing to do with what we train at École Intuit, but I know a lot of people who learn French in school, but they cannot say hello and goodbye. But they can use a subjunctive, past, whatever, because that will be asked at the exams, I think this, and I see that really, I'm not joking. It's a real case that I am talking about.
No, I'm laughing because I learned French in school, and no, not happening anymore. So I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. So that's my point of view.
All right, perfect. I like some of the elements you put in that. It's important. That's that.
Sure.
Sorry,
Dr. Agarwal.
Sorry, my bad. Wait. Dr. Agarwal, my bad. My apologies.
I actually lost my train of thinking. The question was on training faculties.
Yes. Is there a gap? Is there not a gap in your opinion? What do you think we need to do?
Actually, I would probably take what Jan said and push that idea through. I've been in higher education 30 plus years. I've never been trained. There's no concept of training a faculty member. So where did I come from? And if I think I'm successful, why am I successful? I'll just kind of use myself as an example. It's because I did rigorous research in the ecosystem of the US when I was doing my research, my PhD. It's very rigorous. And pedagogically, I'm different. Okay. And that kind of translates into everything I am today, basically, in terms of a faculty member. And I can be also very honest. Some faculty members, even from the Western countries, are horrible teachers, great researchers, or the other way around. It could be whatever it is. Now, there may be some room, some space for faculty members who are coming into the Indian system to be trained in some basic, communication issues and stuff like that. We could think about that, but it's really, I think, a pedagogical push, and that requires a fundamental change in how PhDs and the faculty. Just saying that you have to have a PhD to be hired as a faculty member in Indian university does not meet the requirements as far as I'm concerned. Because which PhD? What did you do in your PhD? How did you go about conducting research? If you look at some of the PhD candidates we are hiring today, it's unfortunate, to be honest. And so that's where I leave it. I mean, how do we move this needle? I mean, why are the IITs, as an example, only trying to go out there and attract foreign faculty? Because they know their PhDs, foreign faculty meaning Indian origin people who are getting their PhDs abroad, they want to come back because they know they will have that pedagogical training. And I feel that's really the missing link, and it'll take a long time culturally for us to evolve. And Tarun said something that I think I want to point out. This is not a sector that attracts people because of the economics of the sector. We just don't treat faculty the way it is. People who join faculty or want to become faculty members in the Western world, and I'm using the Western world because of my experience, are self-selecting themselves into it.
Agreed.
We are a very, very poorly paying sector.
That's true. True. Right. Great. Thank you, Siddharth. Finally, sir.
So I have a slightly different perspective because I think very often universities are actually to blame for not being able to attract faculty, right? Because it is definitely a sector which, where there's a dearth of good faculty, but we don't even invest in capacity building of existing faculty, right? So I think it's very important for universities to understand that capacity building of your existing faculty is really important. And also, typically what happens to us in universities, we get stuck between this qualified and unqualified faculty, right? So they have to be a PhD, they have to publish, they have to move on. But obviously that's just a numbers game and not necessarily a quality game. And therefore, what we were lucky before we became a university, we run a design school. And there were no design faculty available in this country at that stage. And we really had to spend a decade building pools of faculty across. So I think capacity building from institutions is very important. Second is the faculty that you have. I think creating economic opportunity for them is also very important. Yes, we all understand that your resources are limited because you have only school fees that you can earn from. But I think opening up research grants, opening up consultancies, working on projects, consulting projects, industry projects, and really sharing that revenue wholeheartedly with them is something that creates a variable stream of income for them, right? And keeps them also motivated. But I also feel that there are multiple opportunities that we have in India, particularly because we have a young population, right? So peer-to-peer learning. I think very often you see students learn from their peers a lot more than they learn from their faculty, for example. Obviously, you need faculty to put everything into perspective and give a framework for knowledge. But whether it's peer-to-peer learning, whether it's pooling of faculty, right? So we work with, it's sad, we work with universities abroad, but not universities in India to actually exchange faculty for areas where we don't have, right? So machine learning, AI, all of these new areas We get cutting edge faculty from the UK, and we send our faculty, whether it's design or management, back to them. And the last one, which I actually started this panel off with, is the only way of coverage and amplification is through digital, right? So actually, when we talk about training and upskilling, getting our faculty to use digital platforms a lot more efficiently, working with them to increase their impact to larger audiences, is where I think universities have to interest. So yes, there's not enough faculty, but even the faculty that we have, we don't build on. And these are areas that I would like to see universities focus on as they move ahead.
Wonderful. Okay. Some really excellent points. I do, because we're running towards the end of our session time here. There were some questions in the Q&A. I'll request the team to be able to please have a look at those to see if there is any answers that they can give to those questions there. So in terms of just your closing thoughts that I want to be able to get from you, and I'll go in that particular order again. We just go the whole move. We've talked about the pros and cons. We've talked about the gaps that exist. So I do want to be able to get your overall just gut feel and overall view on optimism, cautious optimism, or I'm not even getting near the cautious optimism branch, because I'm not going to go say, no, this is a bad thing, because that'll just undermine the entire thing. So cautious optimism, or I'm not even near the two yet. So Dr. Agarwal, which of the two would you place yourself in? Oh, the three, sorry. I've forgotten my own count.
I think you can guess it's optimism.
Optimism, super. All right, Jan? Jan's worried about his visa.
I'm an eternal optimist. So.
Excellent. That's wonderful. We're not using the visa filter here. Siddharth.
Yeah, I think eternal optimist is Jan. Nothing stops you from dreaming. And if you can dream it, it happens. So that's what I believe in.
Oh, nice. We're referencing the Beatles now. Excellent. Tarundeep?
I'm an optimist. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this space. But I'm cautiously optimistic about this move.
There we go. All right, superb. So we've all got optimism and a little bit of cautious optimism happening here as well. It is going to be a highly disruptive space, and I know that we are going to get into there's a lot of stuff that has come up for everyone to think about. Some excellent points about the fact that we are going to be now thinking about higher education from a different perspective, the requirement to think about it, what it's going to mean for students in terms of opportunities, how it's going to play out when it comes to it being actually out there in terms of the actual implementation, and how much we're hoping they're thinking it through, and not going to rush into it like we have in the past for some other things, and when it comes. But yes, I would say a great deal of hope and optimism for the fact that the whole education system and the education world and academia as such does see a boost in terms of both attracting faculty, being able to look at when we're looking at how we're remunerating faculty, all of that improving. And that's something that I'm going to be able to hope and peg for and look at this. I am one of those people who very heartily disagree with if you can't, you teach. I think if you teach, you make a really major difference in the world. And I think only people who are really passionate can actually teach. So for all of you who have taken on roles, and all of you have taken on roles to teach, thank you very much for doing so, and sending your passion out into the world for doing so. So I appreciate your time and your energy and your thoughts. Lots for everyone to think about as well. Kangan, over to you. I am exactly on time. Talk about managing that well. All right, great.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Mindler, I would like to thank Dr. Prabhu, Mr. Yan, Mr. Siddhant, and Mr. Tarun for joining us today and throwing light on how universities coming to India would be an impact, whether it is a positive or the disadvantages of the same. And as always, thank you, Shilpa ma'am, for moderating the session very beautifully. I hope our participants can get some insight about this same. So thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. It was really nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Shilpa, for being a great moderator.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agarwal. Appreciate it. Thank you.